You probably remember in the first video, we added our video with HTML. But in this video, we'll change the color of the background with a CSS file and do a few other things. But it's really easy to make one. We'll just do the same exact thing we did before when we made our HTML file. So we'll click New File, and we can name this whatever we want again. So let's just name this one homepage.css since it's the homepage. And that's it, we've made it. Now we'll just tell our app where the CSS file is. So far, we've been putting all of the actual content we want on our app inside of this body tag, right? Well, now we'll use this head tag right above it. The body tag is where we put the actual content to show up on the page, but the head tag is where the info about the page goes, like the title or where the CSS file is. At the end of the head tag, we'll press enter and start typing link and press enter again. We'll add a reference linking the CSS file in this href property. In between these quotes, we'll just write the name of our CSS file, homepage.css. And now our CSS file is all linked up. Inside of our CSS file, let's change our main section's background color. All we need to do to select our main section class is to start by writing a dot to show we want to select a class. Then we just write the name of our class. The one we made was called main-section. So we'll just write that here. Then we just write these squiggly brackets at the end. They're usually next to the P on our keyboards. And that's it. We have selected our main section class. Changing our background color is pretty simple too. If we just press enter to give ourselves some room, inside these squiggly brackets is where we can change the color and tons of other things like the size or positions and even add animations. Changing the background color is really simple. We can just start typing background color with a dash in between and press enter. Then after this colon, we can write whatever color we want. Let's try writing gray. And when we save, we see the background color of our main section change in our app. By the way, we don't have to memorize any of this because if we forget at any point, we can just go to Google and type in something like how to change the background color with CSS and see a basic example at any time. But at this point, we probably want to change the size of our main section div and the video inside of it. So let's start with the main section div first. We can change the height with a new property called height. We'll just go to the next line and start typing height and press enter. For sizes, we could use a couple of different measurements like pixels, for example. But for our situation, we want the background's height to take up the entire screen or viewport. Some people call the screen or window the viewport, and we can make our main section take up a certain amount of the viewport by using viewport height. 100 viewport heights is the entire height of the viewport, and a smaller amount, like 50, is half of the viewport. So we'll write 100 viewport heights here and save it. And now we see our gray main section is taking up the entire screen size. But our video isn't fitting inside of the main section though, so we can select the video and change its height too. After the closing brackets, we'll go to the next line and type video to select all the video tags in our HTML. And inside the curly brackets for the video tag selection, we can change the height by just typing height and pressing enter. And this time we can use a new kind of measurement. The video is inside of the main section div, right? But we want the video to take up just a certain percentage of the main section that it's in. In the final designs, it looks like it's taking up about 90% of the section it's in. So we can just write 90% here, and when we save, our video now takes up only 90% of the main section. We're really close to getting everything in. Now let's just add the smaller section with the like icon just below the video. So back in our HTML file, inside the main section div, let's make a new, smaller one for the icon and text. We can just start writing div and press enter. Just so we can select it later, let's give it a class and name it something like icon section. Inside of here is where we'll put our icon in text. You might remember seeing this in the examples of HTML tags from before, but to add text, we can use a paragraph tag. So we can just press P and press enter. In between the beginning and ending tags is where the actual text goes. So we'll write that in here. And it might be a good idea to start it out with 0 likes, right? Since that's how many likes the video will have when we first get to the page. But let's also give it a class so we can select it later. And we can call it number of likes with dashes in between. Before we select it with CSS, let's add the like icon too real quick. I've also added it down in the description, and there are 2 versions of it, the unfilled heart icon and the filled heart icon. And once we download both of them and save them to our apps folder, we can add it to our app in our HTML file. Let's make the page start off with the unfilled version first, and we'll switch it out with the filled in version once the user clicks on it. Inside of our icon section, let's add it right before our P tag. Now we can add images with image tags. So if we type image and press enter, all we have to do is tell our page where the icon image is. Ours is called heart-icon.svg. So let's write that in the source property here. Nice, we've added it, but it's also really big. Let's give it a class so we can select it with CSS and change the size. We'll call this one heart icon with a dash in between. Now we can jump over to our CSS file and select it by first typing a dot to show we're selecting the class, and then the name of our class, which we just called heart icon. Then inside these squiggly brackets again, we'll write the properties we want to change. For now, let's just try setting the height to something like 15 pixels. Nice, we're making good progress. Now, we'll want to move our video, icon, and basically everything in our main section to the center. And CSS gives us a really easy way of centering everything in a section with a property called display flex. So first, in the main section, let's write that since that's what lets us center things. We'll write display, press enter, and set it to flex. You don't have to worry too much about what this display property does yet. Just know that when we want to center everything in a section, setting display to flex lets us use some centering tools. Now we notice display flex is lining things up in the wrong direction. It's lining things up in a row. This is super easy to change. We just type flex direction and set it to column instead. And finally, we'll make sure everything is centered vertically by typing align items center. We're getting pretty close. Now we probably want to center the things in the icon section too and line them up horizontally next to each other. So we'll do the same thing we did with the main section. Let's add display flex to use those same centering tools again, and then we can set align items to center again to center everything in our icon section vertically. It's looking a lot better, but we probably want a gap in between them. And one of those centering tools display flex lets us use is a property called gap. We can set this to any size, but the original design has 16 pixels. And now we see them separated by a gap between them. Okay, cool. So if we take a step back and look at our page, we have one big main section div, right? And that main section div has 2 smaller things inside of it, our video on the top and our icon section on the bottom. Remember how our video is taking up 90% of the main section's height? Now let's set how much height our icon section should take up. Just so we can actually see what we're doing, I'm going to make the background color red for a second. I just made it red temporarily so we can understand visually what's happening, so you don't actually have to make yours red. Since our video is taking up 90% of our main section, we probably want our icon section down below to take up the last 10%. So let's set our icon section's height to 10%. Now our icon section is taking up the rest of the space in the main section. Pretty much all we have to do now is make our heart icon and number of likes text bigger. Since our heart icon is inside of our icon section, we can try making our heart icon take up 50% of the icon section. If we set its height to 100%, we see it taking up the entire height of the icon section. So let's set its height to 50% since that's its size in the final designs. And since we don't need the red color background to help us visually understand the height anymore, I'll just take it away at this point. Now, all that's left is the number of likes text. Earlier, when we made this in our HTML file, we gave this a class called number of likes. So let's select that in CSS by typing a dot to show we're selecting a class, and then the number of likes. Then in the squiggly brackets here, let's change the color to white like the final designs. Now we'll just change the font size. And we can do that by using the property called font size. And we could use pixels for this too, but with CSS, it's almost always good to use another unit size for font sizes called rem. And there's like a technical reason why that we really don't have to know for now. Just know font sizes always use this thing called rem. We can play around with the size if we want, but our final designs are set to 2.5 rem. And we're pretty much done, but you might notice there's some extra space or margin around the outside of everything on the app's page here. We can select everything on the page and get rid of that extra space or margin on the outside by typing star on our keyboards. This selects everything. Then in these squiggly brackets, we'll just set margin to 0 pixels. And finally, the main section's background color in the final designs isn't exactly gray. It's more of like an olive tan color. And if we hover our mouse over the gray color in our CSS, we'll get this cool color picker to play around with different colors. And here's the exact color I actually finally came up with in the final designs though. And now we are totally done with the CSS designs of our app. And these 10 or so CSS properties we learned here are used over and over to make apps. So most of the time, you'll just be using these and maybe a few others. But now it's on to the last video where we make the app finally actually do stuff with JavaScript. You know, helping people get high-paying tech jobs by trying to make learning coding as unintimidating as possible is something I really love to do. So if you want to support and allow me the time to think of ways to help others feel less intimidated by tech, there is a link to my Patreon below. And as the old adage that certainly is a real saying goes, may the odds be ever in your favor and the snacks be ever in your bag. Bye.